Well, I missed this one while I was out last week, and then of course I come back with some kind of bug that's stolen my voice, so bear with me, but this is a pretty important development in the COVID origin saga that's not getting a lot of mention. One of the things we often forget is that lab origin was not some fringe idea that developed slowly over time in opposition to the natural "it jumped from a bat, raccoon, dog, pangolin hybrid at the wet market" theory. Lab origin was actually the original. In late January 2020, Christiansen, an evolutionary biologist at Scripps Research who worked closely with Dr. Fauci and the NIH, emailed Fauci to say that certain features of the virus look engineered, as in someone made them. They didn't just develop naturally in the wild. But that view was only temporary. Within only weeks, Christiansen had completely reversed his position and was writing the infamous and commonly cited at the time as authoritative proximal origin paper in Nature magazine, which argued that the virus's features were definitively the product of natural selection. Of course, Dr. Fauci then promoted that paper from the White House podium as just a study that some well-respected scientists are working on, without disclosing his own role in organizing and prompting that paper, as emails would later show.
There was a study recently that we can make available to you where a group of highly qualified evolutionary virologists looked at the sequences there, and the sequences in bats totally consistent with a jump of a species from an animal to a human. So, I mean, the paper will be available. I don't have the authors right now, but we can make that available too.
So the question then is, why the reversal? Christiansen would be accused by members of Congress of accepting a bribe from Fauci and the NIH to change his mind. The fact checkers will inform you that the pieces of that claim are too disconnected to make it with any confidence. But the simple facts are these. Christiansen was confident in a lab origin. Then Fauci called him up, and Anderson changed his mind. And over time, Anderson has received plenty of NIH grant money. So if it's not bribery, then perhaps it's just knowing who pays your bills and not crossing them. But even if you want to believe Anderson that it was simply the science that changed his mind, that it was never the dollar or the scorching hot scrutiny of the Keebler elf monitoring his work like the eye of Sauron, it is all but undeniable that government agencies and officials early were decidedly against what the evidence would later show as at least more likely than not. It came from the Wuhan lab. Based on the simple proximity of the outbreak to the lab, based on workers at the lab getting sick with COVID-like symptoms before anybody else, based on the likely patient zero being a guy who works at the lab specifically on developing coronaviruses with U.S. financial backing, and other factors all pointing straight at the Wuhan Institute of Virology. And all of this evidence was just hiding in plain sight the whole time. It didn't take some scientific specialty to find it. It just took genuine curiosity to connect the dots. So why was it denied? Well, if the old axiom of follow the money is true, then maybe the denial of the bribery is about as credible as the denial of the evidence itself. Maybe the best way to protect a dollar already invested is with another dollar to shut people up. And that is exactly the accusation now made by a CIA whistleblower speaking with the House subcommittee on the coronavirus pandemic. He says the CIA tried to pay off its own analysts to change their minds to bury the lab origin theory, and even this headline characterizes it too lightly. This whistleblower isn't saying that the CIA tried to buy off dissenting opinions. He's saying that they did. The money was given and the minds were changed. In June, the Director of National Intelligence declassified a report on COVID origins per a law that Congress passed and Biden signed, requiring her to do so. The report is zebra-striped with redactions and doesn't provide much of anything specific to be useful, but it does note that 4 intel agencies remain committed to the natural origin theory. The FBI and the Department of Energy believe it is most likely lab origin, and the CIA and one other unnamed agency remain unable to determine the precise origin of the COVID-19 pandemic, as there are too many gaps in the evidence and assumptions to be made. But according to the whistleblower, that was not the actual opinion of the CIA group assigned to make that assessment. That was the bought and paid for opinion. The whistleblower tells the committee that the CIA assigned 7 officers to a COVID discovery team. These were agents with expertise and experience across a wide variety of scientific disciplines. When the team completed their analysis, the whistleblower says that 6 of the 7 members concluded the intelligence and scientific evidence were sufficient to make a low confidence assessment that the virus came from the Wuhan lab. The one guy who disagreed and said no way, it was definitely the pangolin raccoon dog bats, happened to be the most senior member of the group, but he didn't just use his leadership credentials to persuade the rest of the team into that undecided conclusion. The whistleblower says that to come to that eventual public determination of uncertainty, the other 6 members were given significant monetary incentive to change their position. And again, not just offered money to change their minds. That's not what the whistleblower said. Given money or financial incentive. At least that's what the congressional letter to the CIA says. And that's language that implies the exchange actually happened. And of course, it would appear that they did change their minds, as evidenced by the CIA's official undecided opinion today. And sure, it is just one guy's claim, and we don't have more evidence for it presently than just these circumstances that do appear to line up, but a few things to consider. While he is anonymous to us, this whistleblower is not anonymous to Congress. They know exactly who he is, and they know that he's not just some bum or faker. Reportedly, he is a senior level officer with years of service to the agency. Though I suppose years of service to the CIA might just mean master liar. Fair enough, but if he is making it up, he's not exactly free to do so without consequences. While his whistleblower status does afford him certain protections, if he is outright lying, he is subject to perjury charges, as the committee chairman explains.
However, understand that when someone comes forward as a whistleblower and with whistleblower protections, that they are subject to the opportunity for perjury if they're not telling the truth.
And if he's not just outright lying, well, there should be some existing documentation to support him. That's why the congressional subcommittee is now searching for it. The subcommittee is asking the CIA to provide records of all communications between members of this COVID discovery team, as well as records of payment, including the awarding of any type of financial or performance-based incentive or bonus to members of the group. The CIA has until next Tuesday, the 26th, to respond. Assuming there is any degree of truth to this whistleblower's accusation, the questions it poses are many. Primarily, why is the CIA literally invested in a certain explanation for the virus origin in defiance of the evidence? And if it is ideological or financial or any purpose other than the truth that explains that motive, well, just how reliable is the supposed intelligence that this agency is providing? Like all the other words of the Upside Down, is it now just a term for the opposite? That's not intelligence, that's just propaganda. To that point, how does intentionally confusing the issue, as this whistleblower is alleging the CIA did, how does that serve the supposed purpose of gathering information to make us, well, intelligent? Because that sounds like concealing information to make us dumb. But don't worry, though, because the CIA has pledged to restore its intelligence by looking into the matter themselves. The CIA PR lady says the agency is committed to the highest standards of analytic rigor. Hey, I thought that was a racial slur now, but also integrity and objectivity. The CIA does not pay analysts to reach specific conclusions. She says the CIA takes these allegations extremely seriously, and they're looking into them. And if the CIA is looking into the CIA, well, you're supposed to be confident that the truth will somehow be the outcome. Personally, I'd be more confident in the mafia investigating the cartel. But hey, if you have your doubts, they are willing to work with you. Maybe your CIA check to change your mind is already in the mail as well. So keep your eye on your mailbox and your bank account, and soon you too could be compensated for your CIA-approved opinion. Not going to happen, of course, but the only thing preposterous in that scenario is them paying you for your thoughts. They only take your money to tell you what to think, but even if they were so kind as to compensate the rest of us, that's not a great solution to the problem either, because after all, we already tried free government money to comply. And then we tried it again, and then we tried it again, and we did not get truth or prosperity. Instead, we got the greatest fraud in the history of the country, and a savings account worth drastically less, and yet another round of still more government spending to somehow counter all the problems that the last injection of funny money caused. But in fairness, I guess they do have to plant all these trees to make enough paper to print all that money. And that, as the bill was titled, is how the inflation was reduced from historically bad to just regular bad. Likewise, the intelligence is indeed centralizing away from your mind independently and toward DC power that's much more interested in controlling what you think than protecting your right to think it. Why do I link these topics together? Well, combine the forces of unaccountable spending with thought policing to enforce the correct opinion, and that's what you get with this story. Not only will they tell you what to think, but they'll rob you blind to do it, which is great for them, actually, because once you can't see anything, it's much harder to find the truth for yourself. Thanks as always for listening and for supporting this channel. Always appreciate that thoughtful discussion down below, and especially over on Gab, that is at ML Christiansen. You're always welcome to coming out and chat in my live streams. Those are linked down in the description. Looking forward to it. Goodbye.